In England, it is well known that access to university, on average, varies substantially by the levels of parental income and that students from poorer families access different types of universities than those from wealthier backgrounds. However, the question of whether graduates' earnings vary according to their socioeconomic backgrounds amongst graduates attending similar universities and taking the same subject has remained poorly understood, thus far limited by data availability. Our unique administrative database offers substantial advantages in addressing this crucial question. The findings are also relevant for myriad other issues that benefit from better information on variation in graduates' earnings, including students' choices of subjects and institutions, better information for schools to help advise and guide students whilst at school, and the operation and cost of the higher education finance system. Finally, this study was conducted with students who were enrolled in lower-level classes. Future research may re-explore the findings of this study with other college students in upper-level classes. This would help determine if students' expectations, experience, and perceptions remain constant or change. Well, the banana is the first cultivated fruit. It's one of the food items that literally brought people out of the jungle, out of their hunter-gatherer lifestyles, and was there at the dawn of agriculture, which is what helped force human beings into communities. It's really one of the things that helped invent human culture. It's about 7,000 years of history, and the banana, from its center of origin, which is believed to be Papua New Guinea, spread out with people who traveled in boats across the Pacific into the mainland of Asia and all the way south to Australia. Green spaces contribute significantly to a reduction in soil and aerial temperatures during spells of hot weather, so contributing to human well-being. In the garden context, there is, however, little information as to what extent various types of plants differ in their cooling potential and how certain planting combinations may maximize cooling under a scenario of low rainfall and minimal water inputs. Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language is one of the most famous dictionaries in history. First published in 1755, the dictionary took just over 8 years to compile, required 6 helpers, and listed 40,000 words. Each word was defined in detail, the definitions illustrated with quotations covering every branch of learning. It was a huge scholarly achievement, a more extensive and complex dictionary than any of its predecessors. The comparable French dictionnaire had taken 55 years to compile and required the dedication of 40 scholars. Michel is the creator of the marshmallow test, one of the most famous experiments in the history of psychology, which is often cited as evidence of the importance of self-control. In the original test, which was administered at the Bean Nursery School, at Stanford. In the 1960s, Michel's team would present a child with a treat, marshmallows were just one option, and tell her that she could either eat the one treat immediately or wait alone in the room for several minutes until the researcher returned, at which point she could have two treats. The promised treats were always visible, and the child knew that all she had to do to stop the agonizing wait was ring a bell to call the experimenter back, although in that case, she wouldn't get the second treat. The longer a child delayed gratification, Michel found, that is, the longer she was able to wait, the better she would fare later in life at numerous measures of what we now call executive function. She would perform better academically, earn more money, and be healthier and happier. She would also be more likely to avoid a number of negative outcomes, including jail time, obesity, and drug use. Keith Haring began as an underground artist, literally. His first famous projects were pieces of stylized graffiti drawn in New York subway stations. Haring traveled from station to station, drawing with chalk and chatting with commuters about his work. These doodles helped him develop his classic style, and he grew so prolific, doing up to 40 drawings a day, that it was not long before fame and a measure of fortune followed. Soon, galleries and collectors from the art establishment wanted to buy full-sized pieces by Haring. The paintings skyrocketed in price, but this did not sit well with Haring's philosophy. He believed that art, or at least his art, was for everyone. Soon, Haring opened a store which he called the Pop Shop, which he hoped would attract a broad range of people. While somewhat controversial among street artists, some of whom accused Haring of selling out, the Pop Shop changed the way people thought about the relationship between art and business. One of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, how much of the news is biased? Can we recognize bias? The fact is, despite the journalistic ideal of objectivity, every news story is influenced by the attitudes and background of its interviewers, writers, journalists, photographers, and editors. That is not to say that all bias is deliberate. Adidas teamed up with an organization called Parley for the oceans. Parley goes out and collects plastic waste from the ocean. Adidas uses the plastic waste to make shoes. Shoes made with plastic from the ocean, good for the environment and good for business. Because if you know that rapidly growing consumer segment known as hipsters, and I know you know hipsters, then you know that a hipster faced with the choice between a no-name shoe and an Adidas made with plastic from the ocean will pick the Adidas every day of the week and twice on Sunday, and then walk around like it's no big deal, but look for every opportunity to talk about them. So 2 decades later, what's changed? It's now widely recognized that just 20% of health outcomes are tied to medical care, whereas up to 70% are tied to healthy behaviors and what's called the social determinants of health, basically, everything that happens to us for that vast majority of time when we're not in the doctor's office or the hospital. Healthcare executives now routinely remind us that our zip code matters more than our genetic code, and one healthcare publication even recently had the audacity to describe the social determinants of health as the feel-good buzzword of the year.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My theme for this session is convergence, technology, change, and business practice. This is somewhat dear to my heart, in that I have spent much of the last 15 years involved in various aspects of technology and their impact on business, across a broad spectrum, from applications of signal processing in manufacture right through to the use of utilization data and diary applications to improve the time utilization of the sales force.
What was interesting and revealing about younger and middle-aged views on old age was how relative these were to the individual's own age. Those in their teens regarded 40 as old, whereas those in their 40s thought 70 or 80 was old. For many, health was seen as a determining factor in deciding who is old, and many young participants commented on how fit and active their grandparents are, while others thought ill health and dependence were an inevitable part of aging. The majority of participants, however, regarded old age as something negative, and many expressed fear of growing old.
Lead-in time is the amount of time that elapses between a business placing an order with a supplier for more stock or raw materials and the delivery of the goods to the business. Businesses want the lead time to be as short as possible so that they can meet their customer orders and minimize the time between paying for the stock and receiving the feedback from the customer. However, this may not happen due to a number of factors.
The wings of one of the latter were from 30 to 40 feet from tip to tip. 17 different species of these flying dragons have been found in the Chowk of western Kansas. There have also been found 6 species of toothed birds. Comparatively little has been done toward classifying the late finds, and the task is such an enormous one. Great importance is attached to them, however, since nothing of the kind had been found in America until a little over a year ago, and great stress had been laid by certain geologists on their absence. Another remarkable feature of the discovery was that the fossils which had been reported as not existing in this country had hardly been brought to light in one locality before thousands of tons of them were simultaneously discovered in half a dozen different places. A new study shows that laser light can erase the toner from a piece of printed paper. The approach appears in the Proceedings of the Royal Society. Taking a page from the Art Restoration Handbook, scientists sampled a variety of light sources to see if any could be used to strip the ink from laser-printed documents without damaging or discoloring the paper. UV and infrared were too harsh. But a bright green laser applied in 4 nanosecond pulses vaporizes the print, leaving paper that looks as good as new. Such imprinters will probably run about $30,000, so they probably will not catch on for home use. But people in the recycling world might find that the green laser fits the bill for making paper that's really green. Some interesting facts about the great reptilian fossils recently discovered in Wyoming and Colorado have come to light. The bones found represent reptiles of many sizes, from that of a cat up to 160 feet high. The latter, found at Como, Wyoming, belong to the crocodile order, but the remains give evidence that the animal stood up on its hind legs, like a kangaroo. Another found in Colorado is estimated to have been 100 feet long. A great many remains of the same general class, but belonging to different species, have been collected and sent east, among them from 300 to 400 specimens of the dinosaur, and about 1,000 pterodactyls, have been shipped from Colorado, Wyoming, and Kansas. The snakes attacked, and as long as that rat heart kept thumping, the boas kept tightening their coils and applying bursts of pressure, sometimes for more than 20 minutes. But as soon as scientists killed the heartbeat, the boas loosened up. Even captive-born boas who'd never hunted live prey paid attention to the pulse, suggesting the behavior is innate. And for good reason. The authors say constriction takes a lot of energy. And it can be dangerous, say, if an enemy strikes while the snake's coiled around its quarry. But by following the telltale heart, boas can keep the pressure on just long enough. Before a relaxing meal. The study tests what's called the hygiene hypothesis. The idea is that extreme cleanliness may actually promote disease later on. Researchers collected dust from homes that had a dog. They fed that house dust to mice. They then infected the mice with a common childhood infection called respiratory syncytial virus, or RSV. Mice who ate the dog dust were protected against RSV infection symptoms, like inflamed, mucus-coated airways, suggesting exposure helped them stave off the virus. Those mice also had more diverse communities of gut bacteria than control mice did. The researchers say our pets' microbes may colonize our gut too, and help the immune system learn to respond to infections.